Welcome to a COVID-19 HR Hotline question and answer session. Your presenters are Lori Greenlees, Director of HR Hotline, and Linnell Meath, Director, HR and Content Strategy.
So the HR Hotline has been fielding a lot of great questions from our members regarding the Families First Act as it relates to employee eligibility. So the first question we have, Linnell, is an employee tested positive for COVID-19. The employer sends all workers home for 3 days while they properly ventilated and sanitized the workplace. Are these employees entitled to 3 days of employee paid sick leave because the employer closed their business to clean?
Well, it's a great question. First of all, really great that they did the proper ventilation and sanitation of the workplace. In terms of those 3 days that they send employees home, no, that's not something that's an emergency paid sick leave qualifying reason. There's actually 6 reasons that do qualify for emergency paid sick leave. However, that's not one of them. But employers can do a couple of options. One, compensate the employees for those 3 days. If you think about it, that's through no fault of the employee. They were able and available to work, but the employer shut down the operations in order to do the deep clean. So employers can compensate the employees during that time. I guess a second option would be that if the employer does not pay the employees could file for unemployment compensation during the work week, possibly maybe eligible for partial benefits for that reason.
Great, thank you. So the next question we have is an employee is taking EFMLA because her child's school is closed. Next week, the school is on spring break. Is the employee eligible for EFMLA benefits next week when the school would normally not be in session? What are your thoughts, Linnell?
Yeah, great question again, and one that I like to hear the employers kind of thinking like, well, wait, if it's closed, does that nullify the qualifying reason that they're taking leave? Well, I guess the answer to that would be maybe. Think about it this way. The child isn't in school. That is correct. The school is closed normally as it would be for spring break, not for COVID reasons, but for spring break anyway. But think about the situation where even in a normal time frame or time period that we're in, that child may still be in a daycare situation setting or still have a provider providing, like a childcare provider. And during that time, maybe that childcare provider is closed and unavailable. So that's a situation where, yes, that the qualifying reason then still exists. So the employee would be eligible to take EFMLA for that reason.
Right, just because school's not in session doesn't mean those kids aren't still around and need to be watched necessarily. So I think that's a good point. So our next question on eligibility is whether grandparents are able to take EFMLA to care for their grandkids while the school or child care provider is closed.
Okay. So in this situation, it's generally no. And why is that? Because the EFMLA makes it clear in their definition that it needs to be caring for your son or daughter. But there are some limited circumstances because the EFMLA does take traditional FMLA definition of son or daughter. There is something in there in the regs that talk about in loco parentis. There's some very specific criteria where a relationship may exist between a child and someone who isn't their mother or father. So if in that very narrow situation, the grandparent would be considered in loco parentis and have that relationship, then it could qualify.
Great. So our next question is a situation where an employer is an essential business that's open at this time. Since the CDC says that individuals are over age 60 are at higher risk of having difficulties or contracting the virus, can employers ask employees who are over age 60 to stay home? And if they do, does this qualify as a reason for employees to take the emergency paid sick leave benefits?
Yes. So in this situation, love that the employer is being very compassionate and really, listening to the CDC in terms of their recommendations. However, can they ask employees who are over 60 to stay home? No, they cannot. And does that reason qualify as a reason under emergency paid sick? It does not qualify for that. So it is one of those situations where we completely understand that employers want to be able to minimize risk, but in this particular scenario, they can't discriminate against an employee who is able and available to work. So in this situation, it wouldn't apply.
Right. It's important to always keep those tried and true regulations in our mind, going back to Title VII or the Age and Discrimination Act, that you're not discriminating based on any other protected traits during these times as well. So,
Very good point.
yeah. So the next question is for employers that have multiple shifts working. Are second and third shift workers eligible to take EFMLA because their child's school or child care is closed? Kind of a follow-up question or similar question is, if an employee works shifts on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe that's their normal schedule, can EFMLA be limited to Friday only?
Yeah, these are really great questions and ones that are somewhat similar to kind of that spring break question, and that the answer is, maybe. Let's pick this apart. Let's look at this. So you have a second and third shift worker. Perhaps if that employee does not have a childcare, there's no other options, they would be entitled to take EFMLA. Remember, the DOL, their intent behind all of this is not to exclude any workers, whether on first, second, or third shift, to be able to take advantage of these benefits. So they don't want to exclude any second or third shift workers. It just requires the employers to think through, and also there's documentation to justify any qualifying leaves, but to automatically assume that a second or third shift worker wouldn't be eligible is a bad assumption to make. So similarly too, if an employee works shifts on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if the employer's thinking, oh, well, we'll just limit EFMLA to, Friday, because standard work weeks for a lot of people are maybe, Monday through Friday, that kind of thing. Again, that would be an incorrect assumption to make. It's a similar response to what I gave. If a normal childcare isn't available to watch children during the weekend, then the employee could be covered by EFMLA.
Right. I also like to think of third shift workers. They may be working during different times, working overnight, but then typically during the day is when they're resting and getting sleep. So if their kids are home from school or childcare, they're not able to sleep during the day. So it really does throw their schedule off, and it impacts third shift workers just as much as it does first shift workers. So,
yep, great point.
Yeah.
So it's these kinds of questions and others that we're receiving on the hotline and from employers, and we have a variety of things available for employers to tap into, whether it's documents or other resources to help them through this, whether it's online training to help with their leaders and managers during this time, or whether it's actually bringing someone to help support from an HR standpoint, who can either help transition through some of the things that we're going through right now. So keep in mind that there's different levels of help that MRA can provide, and we are here for you. In addition, our HR hotline is available 24/7, and the contact information is there on the slide. Thank you so much.